It's Thursday, April 15th, and this is now on HNN.
And this is what we know as of now.
Honolulu police continue to investigate a deadly officer-involved shooting in Nuuanu.
Because the truth has inherent value, and people want to see the truth.
Meet the man gaining national attention, trying to change the criminal justice system from the inside.
I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today.
Both prosecutors and the defense have rested their cases in the Derek Chauvin trial. I'm Skyler Henry in Minneapolis with the latest as the former police officer chose not to take the stand.
These stories and breaking news from a West Side building fire coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon. Thanks for watching This Is Now. We're still awaiting those latest COVID case numbers from the state, but I can tell you the state has hit a major milestone. More than 1 million doses of the vaccine have been administered. So we'll keep tracking that, and as soon as we get those numbers, we'll pass them along to you. Meanwhile, a lot of breaking news to get to.
Yeah, we have new developments to report after Honolulu police fatally shot a 29-year-old suspect who allegedly attacked them at a Nuuanu home. Police Chief Susan Ballard just held a press conference moments ago. Here's some of what she had to say.
So at approximately 10:10 p.m. yesterday, officers were sent to a burglary in progress at a Coelho Way residence. When Officer 1 arrived, the 911 caller identified a male sitting in a vehicle as a person who had been in her home. The suspect then got out of the car and began to walk towards Officer 2, who arrived on scene. Officer 1 ordered the suspect to stop and get on the ground. The suspect then turned and charged at Officer 1, punching him several times. Officer 2 tried to get the suspect off of Officer 1. Officer 3 then arrived on scene, deployed his taser, but it was ineffective. The suspect then charged at Officer 3 and punched him before running and charging at Officer 1 again. Officer 1 then fired a single round, but the suspect continued and tackled Officer 1, straddling him, and began punching Officer 1 again. Officer 2 then fired 3 rounds at the suspect, and the suspect then fell to the ground. This all happened in less than 1 minute from Officer 1's arrival.
Chief Ballard says the suspect was taken to the hospital in critical condition where he later died. The 3 officers were also taken to the hospital for multiple injuries. She says Officer 1, who has 23 years of service, remains hospitalized with multiple facial fractures, a concussion, and injuries to his arms and legs. The suspect's identification is pending with the medical examiner's office. Ballard says he appears to be 29 years old with no apparent criminal history.
New at noon, a Pittsburgh man is back in a Kona courtroom. The preliminary hearing for Benjamin Fleming just wrapped up.
Calling case 3 CPC 21330, State of Hawaii versus Benjamin Fleming on arraignment and plea.
What is your client's position with regard to the reading of the charges?
Your Honor, Mr. Fleming waives public reading.
And what is his plea?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Fleming and 2 former classmates from Carnegie Mellon University were vacationing in Kona last month. A detective said last week that the group got into a disturbance at a bar when the victim, Abhishek Gupta, refused to wear a mask. The argument continued back at their Airbnb. A third friend, Alexander Germany Wald, told police that Gupta was punching him when Fleming stepped in and put him in a restraining hold. Gupta passed out. Jeremy Wald told police they could hear him snoring after they put him in another room, but Gupta later passed away. Fleming now faces manslaughter charges. Here's what the judge had to say today.
And so, bail to be maintained, Mr. Egger?
Pending next week's motion, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So I will maintain bail at this hearing, which is set at $250,000, to which a bail bond has been posted.
The Honolulu Fire Department is investigating a 2-alarm blaze in Nanakuli this morning. Firefighters responded just after 9 a.m. to Pa'akea Road and Hakimo Road. According to fire officials on the scene, the blaze appeared to have started in a barn, then spread to a Quonset hut. Officials added the fire spread to electrical wires above, which sparked a small brush fire nearby. A small shed also collapsed. Neighbors were able to contain the fire until HFD arrived. 5 residents managed to escape safely, no injuries were reported, and the American Red Cross is assisting. HFD is expected to remain on scene for several more hours. Pa'akea Road and Hakimo Road will be blocked off while the investigation continues. Honolulu police continue to search for the terroristic threatening suspect Bray Salas. HPD sent out its helicopter, SWAT, and K-9 units to the windward side yesterday. Police tell us they got a tip that Salas was spotted near the Valley of the Temples around noon. HPD units searched the area up and down Kahekili Highway. Salas is wanted for a $50,000 bench warrant. He has 13 prior convictions.
This will be controversial.
This month, PBS premieres a groundbreaking 8-part docuseries that takes viewers into the office of the Philadelphia District Attorney, Larry Krasner, as he and his team work to shake things up and change the justice system.
I suggest you don't shoot unarmed people in the back.
Today, I got a chance to talk with him.
So I wanted to start out talking about something that's going on here in Honolulu. Recently, we've had a couple of deadly officer-involved shootings. One was just last night. The other was last week, resulting in the death of a teenager, actually. I'm just curious what you think, and if there's any data that says officers' use of deadly force is more common these days, or is it just something the media attention is getting more of in the wake of things like George Floyd's death?
So, it is my belief, having been a criminal defense attorney and a civil rights attorney who often sued police officers in Philadelphia since 1987. I did that for 30 years. It is my belief that this has gone on far longer than 30 years, that we have seen this. Honestly, if we really go back, you're probably going back into prior centuries. This has gone on for a long time. The difference is everybody has a cell phone now. Everybody can take video now. And so a lot of people who just didn't want to believe it, and I understand why they didn't want to believe it, because it's awful. A lot of people who didn't want to believe it have no choice. You cannot help but watch the video of George Floyd and realize what is going on there. And we see that day after day, not because it's new, not because it's more. We see it day after day because it's been going on forever, and now we have cameras.
Well, here in our city, we've also had a series of scandals that have obviously corroded some public trust in the criminal justice system. I have to look at my notes really to list them all off. Our current police chief has just announced last week she's stepping down after receiving low marks at the police commissions. Our last police chief is going to prison. The former city prosecutor is under federal investigation, and his deputy was the former chief's wife, who is now in prison. How does our system gain trust back when you have a list like that of scandals and corruption?
Wow, what a great question. I think part of it is that we almost have to find people to put in office who don't want to be in office. You have to find people who are not motivated by political ambition, and you have to get them into office to do things that they have spent their careers doing, to do things in areas where they are quite knowledgeable. I had the advantage of becoming district attorney at 56 years of age without ever having had any kind of political ambition. So as I sit here and I make a decision about a death penalty, or I make a decision about whether we're going to indict a police officer, I'm doing that with no concern about whether it might affect me when I run for senator. I don't want to run for senator. I don't want to be mayor. I don't want to be any of those things. I really just want to do this job. There are a lot of people out there who have this level of expertise. They have dedicated a career to a particular field, but they're not career politicians. And I believe that that can be part of the solution. The other aspect of it, though, honestly, is you just have to look at what people have done with their careers. When they don't just talk and say the right words, but when their careers show that they have truly been dedicated to public service in honorable ways, not to perform, not to have something on the resume as a checkbox so they could rise somehow, but they've really done the right thing for a long time. Those are probably the right people. Those are the ones we need to look to. They may need to be persuaded that they should be the ones in a position of authority, but those are the right people.
So you are obviously a proponent of transparency. Obviously, you're doing a documentary out of the DA's office. Why do you think being so open is important, and why do you think so many people in your position and in the justice system aren't so open and sort of shy away from the media. For example, here, our police chief that just announced he's resigning was accused of not taking questions from reporters after a series of high-profile violent crimes.
I can tell you that most of my chief prosecutor colleagues, especially the traditional ones, run madly to find a camera and try to jump in front of that camera because, like I said, most of them are pursuing some kind of a political career. But that's usually a very controlled situation. That's usually a press conference. When it comes to something like this, no, they're very reluctant to lose control over that situation. We knew when we signed up for this that we had no editorial control. We knew we were going to look bad at times. We were going to look good at times, that people were going to see what we did according to how they viewed the world. The people who didn't like our agenda were probably going to agree with our opponents who show up in this docuseries. The people who liked our agenda were probably going to agree with us. Even when we're making mistakes, they would understand we were trying to be fair. We were okay with that. You know, there is a much higher purpose here than any of us. There is a much higher purpose there, than one person's life. This is about a grassroots movement that is national, that has elected progressive prosecutors in 10% of the country and will elect even more. And it is fair to let them see what we do that works, what we do that doesn't work, what mistakes we make, what wise decisions we make on occasion. It's fair to do that because the truth has inherent value and people want to see the truth.
Both sides in the Derek Chauvin murder trial have finished presenting their cases, and the former Minneapolis police officer says he will not testify in his own defense. Skylar Henry has more.
You understand that you have a Fifth Amendment privilege to remain silent? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin announced this morning it's his decision not to testify in his own defense.
Have you made a decision today whether you intend to testify or whether you intend to invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege?
I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today.
The decision whether or not to testify, take this off, is entirely yours. In other words, it's a personal right. Mr. Nelson makes a lot of the decisions in trial, but one he cannot make for you is whether or not you testify. And he can give you advice, and you can take that advice or reject that advice. But the decision ultimately has to be yours and not his. Is this your decision not to testify?
It is, Your Honor.
The defense rested its case following Wednesday's testimony from a medical expert who refuted multiple prosecution witnesses who blamed Chauvin's actions for George Floyd's death.
Mr. Floyd died of a cardiac arrhythmia due to hypertensive atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease during the restraint.
The retired medical examiner testified that Floyd's death should be, quote, undetermined because there were so many potential causes. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Minneapolis.
Crime, corruption, and scandal. You won't find them in the travel brochures or postcards, but there is an underworld in Hawaii. In The Other Side of Paradise, a new podcast from Hawaii News Now and chief investigative reporter Nuuanu, we delve into the headlines that the visitor bureaus don't always advertise. In our first episode, we profile dynamic and outspoken UH Law School instructor and co-director of the Hawaii Innocence Project, Ken Lawson.
I share my story, not just to help others, but it also helps me remember where I came from.
Find and listen to The Other Side of Paradise wherever you get your podcasts.
So there's this bill to address hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and it's moving ahead in Washington, D.C. Senator Mazie Hirono sponsored it. We talked to her this morning on Sunrise.
This bill actually tasks the Justice Department to do something about this rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans. Can you explain what exactly it does?
One of the most important parts of this bill is that it earned bipartisan support. We haven't had a standalone bill like this that we debate in quite a while in the Senate, so it was significant in that regard. What this bill does is it recognizes that, yes, there is a rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans, and that the United States Senate, and I hope the Congress, the House, will take a position and task the Department of Justice to appoint a person to expedite review of hate crimes across the country and to work with state and county local governments to help them set up online reporting of these kinds of crimes and incidents. So that's what this bill does. It's a pretty straightforward bill, but 6 Republicans still voted against it. I am hopeful that we can move forward on this bill. We're still negotiating on some of the amendments that have been proposed for this bill.
Does this in any way increase the punishment or deter Asian American hate crime?
It does not change any of the current laws relating to hate crimes. What it does is it sets up a way that we can get data on the extent of these kinds of crimes, and so that we can make informed decisions as to what we can do to prevent these kinds of crimes going forward. There's also an education element to this bill.
You know, in the last year, we have seen crime after crime against Asian Americans, whether they're young or old. I was curious in asking you, how horrified have you been in seeing this uptick?
Oh, it's horrifying. We've all seen the images of these totally unprovoked attacks on Asians. They are horrifying, and I would say that not a single Asian person in this country has not taken note of it and has changed some of the things that they do in their everyday lives. For example, when I used to walk out, I would put ear pods on and listen to books on tape. And I would not do that now, because we need to be very aware of our surroundings. These kinds of unprovoked attacks against APIs cannot be condoned or tolerated, and that is why this is a bill that would put the Congress on record to stand with the AAPI community, and in fact with any community that is discriminated against in this kind of horrifying way.
Sweeping statewide emergency orders issued by Governor Ige have been in effect for more than a year. Now some say it's time to ask how long the threat will really be an emergency. Rick Daysog has more.
Most emergency orders are issued during disasters like floods, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions, which have a clear beginning and end. But with the COVID emergency orders in effect more than a year, the governor has issued 19 emergency proclamations with no apparent end in sight.
The problem is what happens in month 2, month 3, month 20, month 40. At what point does this stop being an emergency and start being daily life?
Labor attorney Tony Gill is concerned that some workers' rights laws are suspended by Ige's orders.
How frequently can the emergency order be rolled over and over and over and over?
State Representative Scott Nishimoto wants to have lawmakers review the governor's emergency orders after 60 days. His legislation would give the public more input.
I think what the public really wants is some level of predictability. So whether it's a metrics or it's some kind of way where the public can predict what are the next steps.
The pandemic's very different in a sense from a normal emergency.
But former Governor John Waihee says, unlike disasters like hurricanes where the damage occurs over a relatively short period of time, the current emergency proclamation is so prolonged because the threat to public health during a pandemic is ongoing. He says in most disasters, political leaders want to see a return to normalcy before they start lifting emergency orders.
At that point, usually, is when people are able to go back to work, people are able to travel, people are able to go to school.
Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi says another key milestone is the number of people vaccinated.
I think if we get to 900,000 to 1 million people vaccinated out of, let's say, 1.4 million population, I think we're going to be in really good shape.
Because of that, he says there's little risk that Hawaii's healthcare system will be overwhelmed by new COVID patients. Rick Daysog, Hawaii News Now.
We have those coronavirus numbers for you now. The state health department is reporting 98 new cases today and no new fatalities. The breakdown by island shows 14 cases on the Big Island, 24 on Maui, 1 on Molokai, and 59 on Oahu. Meanwhile, the city's Summer Fun program is being offered for free again this year. We just want to mention this is old pre-pandemic file video that you're looking at right now. Now, Summer Fun will be offered weekdays from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. starting Monday, June 7th through July 27th. Summer Plus, which are activities held before and after the regular program times, will also be offered at many sites. Now, registration will be held online again, so make sure you have your account set up before registration opens. For Districts 1 and 2, which consists of Waikai to Macaulay and Makiki to Aiea, online registration starts May 8th at 9 a.m. For Districts 3 and 4, that's Pearl Ridge to Waianae to Wahiawa and Waialua to Waimanalo, registration is on May 15th at 9 a.m.
Let's take you outside and look at that gorgeous day. Here's Guy Hoggy with an update on the forecast.
We're going to get nice trade wind weather today. Trade winds running at 15 to 20 miles an hour. We'll see lots of sunshine. So the UV index is at extreme levels. And the only weather alert is the small craft advisory for the waters around Maui and the Big Island. Small surf island-wide, fun size up in the country. And then we're expecting more pulses over the weekend coming into the South Shore. Nothing overwhelming, nothing too big, but at least there'll be some fun size waves for the South Shore over the next several days. And over the next several days, the weather will be changing. Breezy trade winds today is going to be absolutely gorgeous. And then by tomorrow, we lose the trade winds. Variable winds take over. And also, we're expecting a few more showers with some bands of moisture coming in Friday and Saturday. You will notice the difference. We'll see a few more clouds, a few more showers. But we're not expecting anything in the way of heavy rainfall. And then drier conditions come in by Sunday. Keep it here on Hawaii News Now. We'll have all your severe weather updates.
As rides dip, the city's bike share program is cutting back on stations and services. Here's Lacey Denise with those details.
Happening today, the bike share program Biki will decommission 6 of its stations. Those stations are in Kalihi, downtown, Kaka'ako, Waikiki, Makiki, and Kaimuki. These are just the first stations to be decommissioned. More are expected to be taken down through the year. Like so many businesses, Biki was hit hard during the pandemic. It stayed open as an essential service through the city and state shutdowns. But the 2020 revenue was only about half of the revenue collected in 2019. For This Is Now, I'm Lacey Denise.
Finally, some space news this week. You know, NASA's expertise doesn't just rely on space and stay up in space. It also is dealing with the surface of Earth and now volcanoes. So the space agency says its satellites can pick up signs of volcanic unrest years before volcanoes erupt. That's huge news for you, right? Scientists analyzed 16 and a half years of radiant heat data from instruments on NASA satellites. The data was for volcanoes that had erupted in the last 2 decades. All of them showed one thing in common. In the years leading up to the eruption, the surface temperature for the volcano increased around 1 degree Celsius, then decreased after the eruption. So you can just imagine the implications here of sort of having a prediction method of volcanoes. It's huge, huge.
Fascinating.
Could save lives, saves properties, all sorts of things. Very cool NASA news. And we were wondering about what happened to that helicopter. And
I know.
We were supposed to launch over a few days ago. Software update. So as soon as that happens someday, soon we'll bring you that news from NASA.
Even on Mars, they have software updates.
Yep.
Okay, so apparently it's really over this time, you guys. Jennifer Lopez and Alex Rodriguez have ended their engagement and are going their separate ways. Now, the superstar couple made the announcement in an exclusive statement to the Today Show this morning. The official split comes about a month after the duo denied reports of any breakup, saying, quote, they were working through some things. Very vague there. Lopez and Rodriguez began dating in 2017, got engaged in 2019, and they postponed their 2020 wedding due to COVID.
Come on, guys. I believe in you. All right, guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now. J-Lo, you guys can get back together, I promise. That's going to do it. We'll see you back here at First at 4 on KHNO. Bye-bye.